So I'll begin by telling you guys a little bit about myself. My name is Ilwad. I spent most of my life in Canada, in Ottawa to be exact, but I was born here. I was born here in Mogadishu. I left at a very young age, but I pretty much spent my whole life in Canada, so I've always considered myself just a regular Canadian girl, but even so, my connection to Somalia has always been very deep-rooted, and I've always really known where I came from and my relationship to Somalia, because throughout my life, not only mine, but my sisters as well, we've always had a constant reminder of where we came from. And that was in part because of my mother. She used to tell us about what Somalia was like before the conflict, her day-to-day life. We used to see pictures of the clothes they used to wear and how they lived, and she always used to tell us these stories about this man that really seemed like a fictional character to my sisters and I, and we really didn't know that somebody like that actually existed. And the person that she spoke so kindly about and with such admiration was her late husband and actually my father, and that was Elman Ahmed. And till this day, he's actually considered as the Somali father of peace in Mogadishu. So the work that he did was really admirable, and it's kind of what always kept my family and I, even when we were abroad in Canada and grew up in a whole new culture, what kept us so close to Somalia. I'll begin by telling you guys a little bit about his story and what exactly made him such a household name even 16 years after his passing. So Elman, he actually left Mogadishu in his early adolescence, and he moved to Italy, where he was actually enrolled in a boarding school, where he actually got a chance that many others didn't in his situation, where he got to pursue his education all the way until he graduated university. Then in 1982, he came back to Mogadishu, and when he came back to Mogadishu, he really stood out like a sore thumb. He wore shorts that were really bright colored above his knees. He had long dreadlocks. He skipped to his own beat, and he really stood out everywhere he went. And he was an engineer by trade. When he came back to Mogadishu, he opened mechanic garages, he opened electronic shops, and because he was so thankful for the opportunity that he received and the education that he got, he wanted to give that back to the vulnerable youth. So he really targeted orphans and street children and actually took them out of the situation that they were in and brought them to his centers, trained them, and then actually gave them jobs within his businesses. Out of the 16 districts in Mogadishu, he ended up owning businesses in 14 of the districts. And all of them were the management level, the functional staff, all of it was run by former street children and orphans. So what he contributed to Somalia was really, he was a social entrepreneur and really somebody that had a really big impact in Somalia. So when things actually took a turn for the worse in Somalia after the collapse of the Siad Barre regime, he wanted to extend the services and the education and the alternative livelihood opportunities that he was giving to street children to also children that were involved in armed conflicts. He actually had a motto that caught on like wildfire, and it was called drop the gun, pick up the pen. Which till this day, 20 years after, is still written all over the walls of Somalia. And what it did is, his mission was very simple, and his purpose of doing that was very clear as well. He believed that the majority of those involved in the armed conflicts were youth, on either sides. On either sides, the majority were always youth. So he felt by presenting them with appealing opportunities and providing them with alternative livelihoods and giving them skills that they could use to sustain themselves, then in turn they would not contribute to being a part of the violence. And by taking out those that were the majority, that were actually contributing to the violence, then he felt that peace building would be a lot easier. And the ones that were left, the warlords, whoever they may have been, they would be easier to reconciliate. The plan was actually working. His plan was working. Hundreds of young child soldiers were leaving their posts as gunmen and security staff to warlords. It really got him a lot of recognition locally. And people that loved him told him that you can't do this, not during this time. You have to protect yourself and you have to get security. People were willing to work for him for free and to guard them with their lives, but he didn't want to be a hypocrite. So he said, I'm not going to tell these young men to protect me with their lives and carry guns when the whole message I'm trying to preach is that weapons don't solve anything. So in his true nature, what he did is he walked the busy streets and the dangerous streets of Mogadishu without any sort of protection. And one day, on March 9th, he was presented with an ultimatum. And that ultimatum was either stop disarming children or stop living. And anybody that really knew him believes that that is the only way that he would have ever stopped what he was doing. He would have rather died than stop trying to save children and the situation that they were in. And that ultimately was his fate. So I want to tell you guys about another hero of mine, my wonderful mother. Her name is Fortune Aden. And in 2007, she actually left Canada. It's always been a dream of hers to come back to Mogadishu and work in Somalia. And when my father was still alive, they actually used to work together. A lot of people, they used to call them one person that God made in two sexes, because they really had the same devotion and the same passion, and they worked together very well. And when 2007 came, and she felt that my sisters and I were old enough to take care of ourselves and were mature enough to stay by ourselves, she actually made the move back to Mogadishu. And she came to lead the organization that is now known as Elman Peace and Human Rights Center. She came back in 2007, and she really stuck to a lot of the principles that were originally incepted by my father, such as sticking true to child protection and making sure to uphold and promote human rights for all people, regardless of anything. What she was also able to do is expand the services outside of just Mogadishu. We now have offices throughout central Somalia as well, and we intervene in many different areas such as livelihoods, education, protection, women empowerment, nutrition, and development, as well as human rights and peace building. So what she has really been able to do is to really bring back a lot of the people that used to work for Elman during the prime, and also recruit new people. She's a really big fan of bringing diasporas to come back to Somalia and helping help their own people. So when my mother came back here, she really made a really big impact on me, and I saw that a lot of people say that it's in my genes to do humanitarian work because of my mother and my father, but to me, it really it makes sense. It makes sense, and I feel like this is something that I need to be a part of. So originally, when I came back to Mogadishu, I had come back to visit my mother that I hadn't seen in a couple of years, to see how I could help, maybe do a little bit of administration work in the office. I was kind of scared about Mogadishu, and I didn't really know anything about it. When I first came here, I actually didn't really speak Somali at all. But after I stayed, I really picked up on the culture, and I saw that something that I did in one day helped somebody's life dramatically. And it didn't take a lot of effort from me, and it didn't take a lot of time. So I did not feel right not being here and helping anymore. So since then, I've stayed, and I have been in Mogadishu for the past 3 years now. And since my time here, I've worked in managing programs aimed at the rehabilitation and the economical reintegration of children involved in armed conflicts. I've also managed programs in providing alternative livelihoods for women and men and young boys and girls alike throughout South and Central Somalia. And most recently, my mother, with an admirable American activist named Lisa Shannon, and a Somali expert, because she's been working in Somalia for so long, named Katie Grant, founded the first rape crisis center in Mogadishu. And we named that program Sister Somalia. And because our main focus of doing this work has been protection, it's protection for all. It doesn't matter if the subject or the person that you are protecting is something that's very stigmatized. We feel like everybody deserves support. And rape, sexual violence, gender-based violence is an issue that is very, very underspoken in Mogadishu, in Somalia at all, completely, because of our culture. And when we started this first rape crisis center, we found an outpour of women so desperate for this support, and that we started providing them with medical care, we provided them with education, business grants, so that they could actually rebuild and reclaim their own lives, and also counseling, psychosocial counseling, which is something that is a foreign concept in Somalia. We are a very proud people, I've learned since I've been here, and we don't really believe in the concept of psychosocial counseling, but as long as, for the time that we've been doing it, it's been really catching on, and women really need that. And when we started this program, we have been blessed by actually getting in touch with a lot of international actors and a lot of different people all around the world who wanted to get involved and wanted to support that work. And then we were even able to partner with our Canadian counterparts and started a new program called She Will. And with that, we were able to start the first Somali all-young women basketball team that consisted of only survivors. And I remember the first day that we took those girls on the basketball court, they were so shy. They thought that a woman or a girl is not allowed to play basketball. I said, why? Give me one reason. How can a woman not play basketball? And there was nothing really behind it, but it's just the culture. And again, and it's something that they're taught. And the girls actually called themselves the elephants. And I want to tell you guys why they called themselves the elephants, because I thought it was so profound. I asked them, okay, pick a name that you guys feel describes you as a team. They brainstormed for a couple of days, and they came up with the name elephants because they said the elephant is one of the biggest animals in the kingdom, and it's one of the strongest animals in the kingdom. However, it's not a terror in its habitat. It has an unspoken grace, but when push comes to shove, it can definitely handle its own. And it's also a very smart and elegant and graceful animal, they thought. So all those characteristics, they felt them as survivors of violence and having been through oppression and being stigmatized and ostracized out of society, that this was the perfect symbol for them. And so they call themselves the elephants, and we are so proud of them. Since then, we have a lot of plans for the future. We've been able to work in many different areas in Somalia so far, but we hope to expand our services and our intervention in Somalia. And we also want to do something more that's sustainable, not just emergency. And I feel like by being here today at the rebirth of Mogadishu, it is so appropriate. I mean, right now, I've been here for 3 years, and I feel like this is the time that we need to be having the rebirth of Mogadishu. Things have changed dramatically. Mogadishu has progressed a lot, and I think by being here in front of you, the leading thinkers of Somalia right now, and also internationally for whoever's watching this stream, that they can see that there is a lot of things happening in Mogadishu right now that are not all bullets or killings or the massive human rights violations. There is life beyond the bullets and the ruins that people think that's all Mogadishu is. So being here today is incredibly inspiring for me, because I feel like it instills hope in all of us that there is more to come. And I'm so honored to be on this panel of speakers, because all these people are such innovators. They all have contributed something, and they have these great ideas on how to bring this country forward. And I remember when I first came here, Mogadishu was recently ranked as one of the 5th worst places in the world to be a woman. I feel by being here today at the rebirth of Mogadishu, very soon we will see this place ranked as something else, perhaps the most beautiful place in the world. And then one day, perhaps I'll be able to say, I had something to do with that, even if it was little. Thank you.